Welcome to the D-Shift podcast, where we provide inspiration, motivation, and education to help you transition from the challenges of divorce to discover the freedom and ability to live life on your own terms. Are you ready? Let's get this shift started. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the D-Shift podcast. And we are going to talk money here. And I think there's only two things that really tend to cause a big emotional reaction in divorce, and that's money and kids. If you can work through both of those things, you're going to be in a much better space. So today I have a true expert here. Her name is Jennifer Lee. She is the founder of Modern Wealth. It's a Sarasota-based financial firm with the focus on helping individuals, men and women, who are going through transitions in life. So Jennifer works with people going through divorce, people who may have lost a spouse, people who are changing their careers, maybe planning on moving into retirement, or any other kind of life transition, changing businesses, buying a business, anything like that she can help you with. She's also an author of a book that I think has the coolest title, and I'm going to let you talk about your book, but it's Squeeze the Juice, Live Life with Purpose, and Leave a Legacy. And I think that's a fantastic title. So Jennifer, welcome, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be on your show.
Well, and we're thrilled to have you because money, as we were talking earlier, money is one of those things that people will waste money to try to fight over money in a divorce. And that gets really frustrating for them, for their attorneys, for everybody involved. So before we get into that, though, can we talk a little bit about what got you into this area of expertise?
Sure. I've been in the industry going on 29 years. I absolutely love talking about money and handling money, but most of my clients do not. Many of my clients are what I might refer to as an ostrich. They'd rather put their head in the sand when it comes to saying things like, what's your asset allocation? What kind of cash flow do you have? What does your retirement strategy look like? Their eyes get big and they would rather not address it. So I really started to focus on, and we don't discriminate men or women, but mostly the non-moneyed party. That's the person who in the relationship often doesn't handle the finances. Mm-hmm. And so we work specifically with that party to get them acclimated with the assets they have, the resources that they have in their marriage, what they would have on the other side, and how they can make life work for them from a financial perspective. Yeah. And we try to make it more pliable. So you don't necessarily need to know the different asset allocation and things of your accounts, but I need to know, what do you have? What are your resources? What's your income? What's your assets? What are your buckets of money? And then what do you want? What is your life going to look like? And how can we make those things work as efficiently as possible?
And this is why, as a divorce coach, this is one of the things I tell everybody that comes to me, whether they are the primary income earner or whether they are the parent that, or the person in the marriage that maybe has a lower income or has no income. I always say to them, before you talk to an attorney, talk to somebody to deal with the money, because attorneys know the law. They don't necessarily know what's financially possible. Do you find that happens sometimes with your clients? They get advice from and that's nothing against attorneys. It's just, it's not their wheelhouse. So do you find that sometimes happens and catches clients up for you?
It definitely does. It's interesting. And I think it takes a village and a team to get somebody through a divorce, and a divorce coach plays a critical role in that. Oftentimes I will meet somebody who has already met with an attorney, and then they come to me and they say, I need your help. I have to provide these things. And I say, well, what did your attorney tell you that you can expect, given your 20-year marriage, given where you live here, given the number of children, given the income? What can you expect? And they say, I don't know. They didn't hear it, right? And so, in my mind, the first step is to get clear on the questions you need to ask when you go into your attorney. The second step is to get those answers. And a lot of times a divorce coach can help you, model that, get it ready before you go in there and waste $400 an hour, meeting with an attorney, and then come to somebody like me and say, okay, here's what we have. Here's what the attorney said I could get if we go all the way to the mats. And then we kind of talk about, what is it if you got half of this? What does that look like? Where will you stay in the same house? Does it make sense for you to downsize? What are you able to get a mortgage? Lots of different things. So we're having those meaningful conversations about what your life's going to look like on the other side. And, you know, the divorce coach is helpful in there too, because I can be a little bit of a financial therapist, but I can't, for every piece of that, you need support, right? It's these are big steps. These are big changes.
Jennifer, what is a common mistake or misperception or misconception that clients who come to you kind of typically have? So let me ask you that in less of a big picture thing. What about with the alimony? Is there any kind of misconception you typically hear people say about the alimony, or are people usually pretty clear on that one?
No, nobody's, I would say people aren't clear about any of it. I just met with a client a little while ago, and she and her soon to be ex have, $14 million, and they've got real estate and all kinds of things. And she's like, well, I want him to pay my mortgage, forever, not just till he's 70. And I said, well, you're going to be divorced from him. So are we going to pay off the mortgage, or, you're going to have alimony so that you'll have the income over your lifetime, but we got to have some life insurance to protect that alimony, right? She's 58 years old. She's going to have alimony for 12 years. Well, if he dies, boom, that's gone.
Yeah.
Right. So we want to make sure we have life insurance to protect her with that alimony. So I would say clients are understandably confused. Things are cloudy.
Yeah.
I was talking to a coach a couple of weeks ago, and she said, during divorce, your executive functioning skill is lacking. And I love that. It's so true. You're cloudy. How can you navigate through that on your own?
Yeah.
With precision?
Well, and here's what always kills me. And I've gone, I've been at various conferences and I've said this, and I get mixed reactions based on who's in the crowd. But at a time when, research shows that's the second most stressful thing that most people are going to experience, the first one being the death of a spouse. The next one is divorce. And then, things like job loss, home loss, moves, that all comes into divorce, right? It's like a whole bucket of things that happen. And at the time when you are at that very high stress level, you are asked to make the most important decisions, particularly around your finances. And when people don't reach out to talk to somebody who's an expert in financial matters, they might as well just, put things up on the wall and throw a dart and go, well, that's the option I'm taking, because I don't know anything about finances to that degree. That's why I send my clients to somebody who knows about finances.
You're exactly right. I was just going to say, the thing that makes me crazy as a money person, as a financial person, is leaving money on the table, right? Get your fair share, and let me help you get your fair share. Have a coach, have an attorney, have a team that supports you, have friends that support you in towing that line all the way. And that doesn't mean being wasteful with money and extending things unnecessarily over trivial things. We were talking about the toaster oven from the wedding, whatever it is. That doesn't mean getting distracted by those things, but it does mean don't give up too soon, right? Don't just be exhausted and say, whatever, I don't care. Just, I want to be done with you. Yes, we want you to be done with that relationship. We want you to move on, but we want you to be set up for success.
Right.
If you get all your half and your fair share and you don't want it, you want to give it to charity, great. I'd rather you give it to somebody. But don't leave it with the ex.
Right. And I think a lot of that has to do, again, I'm repeating myself, I realize that, but it's knowing what your options are and talking to somebody who you can say, okay, I got to do a little bit of horse trading here about what we're going to get, what we're going to keep. And I don't really care about the, if you've got multiple estates or multiple properties, I don't really care about the house in Colorado, but I really want the condo in Florida. Like, you have to know where your priorities are too.
Absolutely. I spend quite a bit of time working with clients and taking their marital assets in an Excel spreadsheet and talking to them about what do they want, which items do they want to keep, and then what's the equivalent that their spouse is going to get, and how do we make those things even out.
Right.
And so, at first glance, clients often are overwhelmed. They say, how does that work? We'll figure it out. We're just going to even out things all the way down in the spreadsheet, and you'll get your half.
Right.
And he or she will get their half. So it doesn't have to be as overwhelming as we make it out to be. I think that, people know that they need the attorney to facilitate the divorce.
Right.
They're still anxious about, do they need the financial person, and what does that cost, and what do I really need all these different people for? And it's just to be more efficient, right? To expedite this.
Well, and it's kind of, I always use sort of the analogy of, would you like to invest a couple $1,000, and I don't know I'm not assuming that this is anybody's cost, but on your divorce team, do you want to invest, say, a few $1,000s to have everything and possibly save yourself $300,000 in taxes and lost interest over the next 20 years? Or do you want to just wing it and see what happens and hope for the best? Because that's really your options.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And there's always something that an advisor can add value. Oftentimes, I always joke around when I'm talking to a client. They say, "That's a good idea." I say, "Well, that's one. That's it for the meeting, right? I got one good idea, But there's always something that we've experienced working with somebody else that the attorney doesn't think of. And like I said, it does take a team. Everybody has their expertise, and as long as your team in their discipline is advocating for you and knows their stuff, that can feel really empowering to have that support.
Right. And something that I've heard other people talk about, and I'm wondering, if I don't want to put you on the spot, but maybe you could expand a bit on this, that a dollar is not a dollar in different asset classes within a divorce. Can you share a little bit about what that means from your perspective as a financial expert?
Sure. So, if you think about the different resources you have, the assets that you've accumulated as marital assets, you may have a home that is your personal residence. You may have a home that's a rental property. You have IRA assets. So let's take your primary residence, for example. You need somewhere to live. So that's not liquid. It's not money that you can spend. It's not money that you can invest and have earnings come off of it and live on those. So those dollars are put into your your homestead for yourself and for your kids, maybe. Your retirement money versus cash in the bank or the stock market, right? The cash over here is after tax, and your retirement account is taxable. So if you were to say, okay, I'll take the $500,000 in the retirement account, you take the cash. Well, when you take the money out of the retirement account, you have to pay taxes on it. So maybe you have a low tax bracket, that's great, but maybe you have a high tax bracket. It's not an equivalent dollar for dollar. So oftentimes you have to, most times I recommend that you just split the IRA assets with a qualified domestic relations order, a quadro.
Right.
Don't let your attorney forget to do that, because they'll waste another 6 months. But when it's all said and done, that is the document that allows your financial person to divide assets that are considered IRAs or qualified monies. So you will need that. So you just split it in half. You get half of the IRA, they get half the IRA, and you split the cash. That would be a better solution. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, no, it really does. And I think this becomes even more important when you're dealing with an unreasonable, irrational, toxic, high conflict spouse who is saying what's mine is mine, what's yours is mine, and take it or leave it. That's all you get. And I've had clients who have come to me or come into mediation and really believe that, the income earning partner has the ability to sort of dictate what happens with all of that. And no, they don't. Right.
Right. Let's correct that right there. They don't. And that's why you need experts to be able to tell you, to educate you, to lift you up and build that confidence. If you've been in a high conflict and a toxic relationship, inevitably you probably feel a little bit like you've been under somebody's thumb. And we need to bring some sunshine and tell you what it's really like in the real world, and what you're entitled to. Right. And that's where you need your attorney to be crystal clear about what you're entitled to based on years of marriage, based on asset accumulation, based on all this stuff. And the coach and the financial person supporting you in saying what he's telling you, ignore. Just say, that's not true. This is what I'm entitled to.
Right.
I'll see you in court. I'll see you in mediation. I'll see you whatever. Stop talking.
Right. Right. Yeah. And don't try to convince them what they're doing is wrong. Just let them have their happy moment in the sun, because it's all going to probably come crashing down at some point in time.
Narcissism is not beatable.
Yeah.
You cannot win with a narcissist. I mean, it's just impossible. You can't rationalize it. It's like talking to a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Having a temper tantrum.
You can have the knowledge that you need to be armed, like you say, with your financial, what you have the right to access. And it, depending on where you live, whether, like I'm in Texas, a community property, even though it's supposed to be 50-50, that's not, you've still got to be clear on what you're expecting. Jennifer, it just occurs to me that if a woman is sitting here listening, because mostly it's women, but if it's a man listening, great, we're glad you're listening. Let's say they are a little hesitant, like you said, about talking about finances. They feel a little awkward going to an expert like yourself because maybe they don't have any clue about, or they have some basic understanding about what their assets are. Can you walk through what an initial meeting might look like so that people that are maybe feeling a little uncomfortable about even approaching a professional like yourself would be able to say, oh, I can handle that?
Sure. Well, I really, Marty, I really try to make money as pain-free as possible, which I know for your listeners is maybe like, yeah, right. I'm very comfortable talking about money. I mean, I get it honest. I learned it from a young age. So it's a subject matter that I have no problem talking about. And again, I try to make it absorbable. I wrote a book called Squeeze the Juice, right? And so Squeeze the Juice is about getting the best out of your life, out of a relationship, out of a podcast, a conversation, a trip, whatever it is. And it has some basic financial concepts in it that will give you context around which we can have a conversation. Oftentimes on a podcast, I'll suggest that, I'll offer a no cost, no obligation, just 15-minute call, right? Because your listeners probably have a question specific to them that maybe we didn't address exactly. So if they want to, they can schedule with me on Calendly. It's Jennifer Modern Wealth at Calendly.com. And I'll answer their burning question. But the topics in the book just kind of go through the basic financial components, which gives you context around how to gather your thoughts, right? How to feel comfortable and confident about the questions that you might have. Most of my clients, they're those ostrich, and there's even a chapter called "Are You an Ostrich?" Right? Because oftentimes that's where you feel like you are, and that's okay. You do not need to be the expert. You just need to be able to tell me, what do you have? What's your income? What's your assets? What's your spouse have? We have a house, we have a business, we have this. And then what do you want? Well, I want, my kids to be in the same school district. I want to be able to take a vacation. I want to live in our house, whatever it is. Right. And then we have to figure out whether your money is going to allow us to get you what you want. And that's, that's my job in between.
And that is so important because unfortunately, I'm sure you've had this clients come to you with this too, where they have been told by their family, their friends, and maybe even their attorney, get the house. That's the biggest asset. That's what you want to have in the divorce. And then they get the house. They can't assume the mortgage. They don't qualify for a mortgage on their own. They can't afford the maintenance. They didn't think about the homeowner association fees and the insurance and everything else. And that can become a nightmare for people because they're basically forced to quick sell to get out of it. And then they're going to take that hit on the capital gains on top of that. So it can really be a poor choice to hold on to something just because everybody else tells you to do it. This is why I think, like I said, I recommend that people speak to somebody who's got financial expertise before they even go to their attorney, because that way they're clear with the attorney right from the get-go. I don't want to take the house. So that can sometimes make negotiations a whole lot easier if everybody knows that right up front.
It's true. And the house is often a big emotional component. Oftentimes they want to keep the house because, I want to keep my kids and this is the house they grew up in. And okay, so I understand that. But if we break this down and you end up with no cash and the house, and your ex has a condo and he's able to take them on great vacations and you can't do anything but take them, for hamburgers and hot dogs, how is that going to feel? Is that really what you want? Right. So it's talking people through the emotions of what does that financial decision look like? And are you okay with it? Some people may be okay with it. That's fine. We always cook at home and everything is great. The home is the most important component. Okay. Then that you're intellectually making that decision rather than a reflex and an emotional response.
That's what I was going to say. It's a well thought out outcome as opposed to just, what do you want to do? Yes or no, which is quite often in a divorce. That's really what you're presented with. And a lot of times it's these, or you have to make like 10 big financial decisions in 20 minutes in the attorney's office because they've got a call or a settlement conference or something coming up right away. So I love the idea that people could come talk to you. You can talk through all the options and then take a look at how is this best going to serve me post-divorce. Exactly. I think that's so valuable. Yeah, absolutely.
And your attorney will thank you, and it will cost you less money, honestly, because we don't charge $400 to $600 an hour to meet with you and talk to you through those discussion points.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything you think we've missed covering, Jennifer?
I think we hit the highlights. Don't leave money on the table. Make sure you're well prepared. If you have any questions, we certainly want to get those answered. I think we hit quite a few spots. I don't have anything that's burning on my mind that I need to add.
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing, these 25 minutes go by so quickly when we get talking. So if there was one of those things, and you just kind of highlighted 3 or 4 that we had talked about, what do you think is the most important one of those?
I think the most important is having your ducks in a row and having your team, so that you don't give up the money or give up too soon.
Yeah.
You really need to. It's hard. Divorce is not an easy process. Just the emotions of it, let alone the financial components and the children, and then actually going through the steps. It's not an easy process. So it's much better if you have a team that you can lean on and good friends. So don't go it alone.
Don't go it alone. Absolutely. Jennifer, thank you for all your wisdom and expertise, because I think we can't have enough conversations about the fact that money is important for life and moving forward post-divorce. And I really like that don't leave money on the table just because you don't want to, you don't feel comfortable fighting for what's rightfully yours through the process. So thank you for that. If people want to find out more about what you do or want to get in touch with you to work with you, what's the best way to do that?
Sure. You can hit me on the Calendly, which is Jennifer Modern Wealth, or my website, which is modern, then a hyphen and the word wealth.com.
And I will make sure all of that stuff gets in the show notes so people can find it really easily. Jennifer, thank you so much for your time being here today.
Absolutely. My pleasure. It was fun.
And I want to thank everybody for listening in. And don't forget to tune in to the next episode of The D Shift. Thanks for listening and supporting the D Shift podcast. If you would like to attend live trainings by our amazing guests and have a chance to ask questions and get answers from our experts, join the D Shift crew. For more details and to sign up, head on over to www.divorcecoachforwomen and click on the podcast page.